I don't think anyone really believes me when I tell them what happened during my overnight shift at the self-storage facility out on Route 7. I can't blame them. If it hadn't happened to me, I'd probably laugh it off too. But I know every detail, every sound that night. Sometimes, I still smell the dust and hear the electric hum of the old fluorescent lights, even when I'm nowhere near that place. It started out as an ordinary Tuesday. My boss had texted at the last minute. Tony, the usual night guy, was out sick. It'll be quiet. Just monitor the cameras and do a walkthrough before closing up. Easy money, he said. I needed the cash, so I agreed, even though I hated how the storage lot felt after dark. By 10 p.m., the sun was long gone, and the facility looked like a grid of pale rectangles in the security floodlights, rows of roll-up metal doors vanishing into blackness. Everything felt sharper and more hollow at night. The gravel crunching under my boots, the rusty gate whining when it swung shut behind me, the faint buzz of insects pressed against the office window. I locked up the front entrance and settled behind the little counter, surrounded by cardboard boxes and the smell of burnt coffee from the afternoon shift. The first time I noticed something was off, it was barely past midnight. I'd been watching a late-night game show on my phone, half drowsing, when I heard it. A brief, metallic rattle, like someone tugging at a roll-up door. It echoed right through the floor, sharp enough to make me put down my cup. I checked the monitors. Nothing. Just empty corridors and the dim orange glow from the lot lights. I told myself it was probably a stray animal, or maybe the wind. But the air was dead still outside, and I'd never heard wind that sounded exactly like footsteps shuffling over gravel. I stared at the grainy security feed, my finger poised over the call button for the offside guard. After a long minute, nothing else happened. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself I was just jumpy. It was easy to get spooked in a place like this, surrounded by strangers' forgotten things. After a while, I convinced myself to do the scheduled walkthrough. The facility was just 3 rows of units, maybe 40 in all. I made my way outside, flashlight in hand, the beam wobbling a little because my grip was tense. The night air was thick with the smell of damp concrete and stale dust, and the only sounds were the distant croak of frogs by the drainage ditch. As I passed the first row, I noticed something odd. Unit 17's door wasn't flush with the concrete like the others. It was off by less than half an inch, but I could see the hairline shadow where the light leaked in. I was sure I had checked every door before I started my shift. I bent down and ran my thumb along the cold metal seam. It wasn't locked, just resting in the latch. I hesitated, suddenly aware of how the silence around me felt heavier, like the lot itself was holding its breath. I slid the door up slowly. The hinges moaned, echoing down the row. The unit was empty except for a thin layer of dust, and weirdly, a single set of footprints leading from the doorway to the back wall. They looked fresh. No cobwebs, the prints sharp in the dust. My breath caught in my throat as I realized the prints stopped abruptly at the wall. No sign of someone turning around. Just a dead end. I stepped back, heart working overtime, and scanned the row behind me. Nothing moved except a moth fluttering near the lights. I shut the door and locked it properly, forcing myself to move calmly, as if that would keep me from noticing how my hands trembled. I forced a laugh, shook my head, and told myself someone must have come in earlier. Maybe a customer. Maybe Tony, tracking dust before leaving. Maybe they wiped their way out to cover their tracks, or maybe the dust was just heavier in one direction. I almost believed myself, but the smell inside the unit clung to me as I walked away. A cold, musty odor, almost metallic, like rain on old coins. I wiped my palms down my jeans and tried to shake it off. Back in the office, I checked the logbook for Unit 17. The last entry was a month ago, someone moving out, nothing since. No after-hours access. I stared at the page, tracing the faded handwriting, and tried to ignore the way the overhead lights flickered, stuttering shadows across the filing cabinets. I told myself to stop being ridiculous. It was just a footprint, And a loose door. There was an explanation. There always was. I sat down again and pulled the security feeds up on the monitor, forcing myself to scan each row, searching for movement or anything out of place. The cameras showed only static, empty walkways, doors sealed tight. The silence pressed in, too thick and deliberate. I tapped my fingers on the counter, counting down the minutes until sunrise. Then, sometime after 1, I heard it again. That metallic rattle, but closer this time. Sharper, like a lock being twisted. I straightened, listening so hard my ears buzzed. The sound came from the far end, somewhere beyond the blind spot between cameras. I stood, grabbed my flashlight, and hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me not to go, but I couldn't ignore it. If there was someone out there, I needed to know. I stepped outside, closing the office door behind me with a soft snick. The chill had deepened, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and something sour, almost like spoiled fruit. Each breath burned a little in my nose. My boots crunched over the gravel as I moved between the rows, the flashlight beam catching on padlocks that winked back like dull eyes. Halfway down the final row I saw it. Unit 28's door was rolled up just a few inches, enough to see the darkness pooling inside. The lock hung from the latch, swinging back and forth like a pendulum, tapping out an irregular rhythm against the steel. I crouched, shining my light into the gap. The beam caught on something just inside, a scrap of red cloth, fluttering as if in a breeze, even though the air was dead still. I called out, trying to sound firm. "Hello? Facility's closed. You need to come out." My voice sounded dry and small, swallowed by the metal and concrete. No answer. I waited, nerves jangling, half expecting a raccoon to bolt out, or worse, a person. Nothing moved except the cloth twitching at the edge of the shadow. I pulled my phone out, thumb hovering over 911, but stopped. What would I even say? I took a shaky breath and knelt lower, peering inside. The light revealed empty space. No boxes, no furniture, just that scrap of cloth. And just behind it, something written on the concrete in a looping, childlike hand. It was a single word, smeared in what looked like reddish-brown paint, or I didn't let myself finish the thought. The word was, "Stay." I stared at it, my mouth dry, and felt the prickling certainty that I was being watched. The back of my neck crawled. Without thinking, I slammed the door shut and snapped the lock in place, backing away until I was in the open lane under the harsh glare of the floodlights. I forced myself to breathe slowly, counting the seconds in my head. The Endel exhibition. Air around me felt different, thicker, as if pressing in from all sides. The floodlights above buzzed louder than before, their glow tinged with a faint, unnatural yellow. I stared at my hands. Dust smudged into the lines of my palms, trembling so badly I nearly dropped the flashlight. I hurried back toward the office, each step echoing off the metal doors. The air was colder now, but sweat trickled down my back. I fumbled the key at the office door, missing the lock twice before it slid in. Once inside, I locked it behind me and pressed my forehead to the glass, trying to spot any movement in the lot. All I saw was the endless rows of units perfectly still, and my own warped reflection staring back. My breath fogged the glass. I told myself to call the police, or at least my boss, but my hands shook too much to dial. My thumb hovered, but I stopped. What was I supposed to say? That I'd found strange footprints, and a word scrawled in some kind of paint? That every sound out here felt wrong. I imagined Tony's voice, laughing it off, telling me I was letting the night get to me. I set the phone down and tried to gather myself. The silence pressed in, heavy as a blanket. The monitors flickered, one by one, static crawling across the screens. I stared, waiting for them to clear. Then, on the feed from row B, a strange flicker, like a person moving just at the edge of the frame. I squinted, leaning close. The figure was gone as quickly as it appeared, leaving only the empty corridor and a faint afterimage in my mind. darker than the rest of the lot. I rubbed my eyes. My brain grasped for any explanation. Maybe a moth crawling over the lens, maybe my own tired mind filling in blanks. But I felt watched, more acutely than ever, as if someone, or something, stood just behind the office walls, waiting for me to look away. A soft chime made me jump. The interior door alarm, the one that should only sound if someone entered with a key. No one else had a key tonight. I stared at the door, the cheap metal handle glinting under the flickering lights. My mouth went dry. There was no sound of footsteps, no rustle, just the faint, insistent beeping. When I finally moved, it was automatic. I grabbed the office chair and wedged it under the handle, heart hammering as I listened for any sound, any breath. The air was so still. I could hear the faint whir of the security fan spinning overhead. I backed away, scanning the monitors, trying to convince myself it was some mechanical glitch. The monitors flickered, the feeds warping for a split second. Every door on the screen seemed a little off, ajar by an inch, just like Unit 17 had been. I blinked hard, and the images snapped back to normal. Every door closed, nothing out of place. I let out a shaky laugh, rubbing my arms to drive away the cold now crawling deeper under my skin. A sudden bang made me flinch. Something slammed against the far wall of the office. It wasn't loud, but it felt deliberate, like a warning. The fluorescent lights buzzed brighter, then died, leaving only the blue glow from the monitors, painting everything in sickly shadow. The silence after was worse than the noise. I pressed myself into the corner, clutching the flashlight, its beam jittering across the cracked linoleum. In the gloom, the storage facility felt impossibly big, the rows of doors stretching out forever. The hum from the monitors grew louder, almost a vibration under my feet. I tried to focus on anything normal: the faded fire exit sign, the mug still on the counter, the clock.